George Henry Sanders was a Russian-born English film and television actor, singer-songwriter, music composer, and author. His heavy English accent and bass voice often led him to be cast as sophisticated but villainous characters. He is perhaps best known as Jack Favell in Rebecca, Addison DeWitt in All About Eve, King Richard the Lionheart in King Richard and the Crusaders, and the voice of the malevolent man-hating tiger Shere Khan in Disney's The Jungle Book. His career spanned more than 40 years. Early life: Sanders was born in St. Petersburg, Russian Empire, at number 6 Petrovsky Ostrov. His English parents were Henry Sanders and Margaret Sanders. Actor Tom Conway was his elder brother. His younger sister, Margaret Sanders, was born in 1912. The future actor was 11 when, in 1917, at the outbreak of the Russian Revolution, the family returned to England. Like his brother, he attended Bedales School, Brighton College, a boys' independent school in Brighton, Sussex, then went on to Manchester Technical College. After graduation, he worked at an advertising agency, where the company secretary, aspiring actress Greer Garson, suggested he take up a career in acting. Career: Sanders made his British film debut in 1929, 7 years later, after a series of British films. His first role in an American production was Lloyd's of London as Lord Everett Stacey. His smooth, upper-class English accent and sleek British manner, along with a suave, superior and somewhat threatening air, put him in demand for American films throughout the following decade. He played supporting roles in A Pictures productions such as Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca, in which he and Judith Anderson played cruel foils to Joan Fontaine's character, and in The Director's Foreign Correspondent. Later that year, he played one of his career's few heroic parts. He had leading roles in lower-budget pictures such as Rage in Heaven, and in both The Falcon and the Saint film series. In 1942, Sanders handed the Falcon role to his brother Tom, in The Falcon's Brother. The only other film in which the two acting siblings appeared together was Death of a Scoundrel, in which they also played brothers. Sanders played Lord Henry Wotton in the film version of The Picture of Dorian Gray, and he was the third lead in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir with Gene Tierney and Rex Harrison in the leads. Sanders gave one of his most well-received performances, starring with Angela Lansbury and director Albert Lewin's The Private Affairs of Bellamy, taken from an 1885 novel by Guy de Maupassant. He and Lansbury also featured in Cecil B. DeMille's biblical epic Samson and Delilah. For perhaps his best role as the acerbic, cold-blooded theatre critic Addison DeWitt, in All About Eve, Sanders won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance. He then starred as Sir Brian Du Bois Gilbert in Ivanhoe, dying in a duel with Robert Taylor after professing his love for Jewish maiden Rebecca, played by Elizabeth Taylor. Sanders starred as King Richard the Lionheart in King Richard and the Crusaders. Peter Sellers and Sanders appeared together in the Pink Panther sequel A Shot in the Dark. Sanders had earlier inspired Peter Sellers' character Hercules Grit Pipe-Thin in the BBC radio comedy series The Goon Show. Sanders went into television with the series The George Sanders Mystery Theatre. He played an upper-crust English villain, G. Emery Partridge, in The Man from UNCLE episode The Gazebo in The Maze Affair, and reprised the role later in that same year in The Yukon Affair. He also portrayed Mr. Freeze in 2 episodes of the live-action Batman TV series which were shown in February 1966. Sanders voiced the malevolent Shere Khan in the Walt Disney production of The Jungle Book. He had a supporting role in John Huston's The Kremlin Letter, in which his first scene showed him dressed in drag and playing piano in a San Francisco gay bar. One of Sanders' final screen roles was in Doom Watch, a feature film version of a contemporary BBC television series. Novels: 2 ghost-written crime novels were published under his name to cash in on his fame. The first was Crime on My Hands, written in the first person and mentioning his Saint and Falcon films. This was followed by Stranger at Home in 1946. Both were actually written by female authors, the former by Craig Rice, and the latter by Lee Brackett. Singing: in 1958, Sanders recorded an album called The George Sanders Touch, Songs for the Lovely Lady. The album was released by ABC Paramount Records, and carried lush string arrangements of romantic ballads, crooned by Sanders in a fit baritone bass, including such as My Love, a song of Sanders' own composition. After going to great lengths, he got himself signed to sing in South Pacific but was overwhelmed with anxiety over the role and quickly dropped out. Sanders' singing voice can be heard in Call Me Madam. He also signed on for the role of Sheridan Whiteside in the stage musical Sherry. Based on the Kaufman-Hart play The Man Who Came to Dinner, but he found the ongoing stage production highly demanding. He quit when his wife Benita Hume discovered she had terminal bone cancer. During the production of The Jungle Book, Sanders, who voiced Shere Khan, was unavailable to provide the singing voice for his character during the finalized recording of the song, That's What Friends Are For. According to Richard Sherman, Malevolent member Bill Lee was called in to substitute for Sanders. In the film, however, all the singing was done live and Sanders provided Khan's singing voice. Personal life: on October 27, 1940, Sanders married Susan Larson. The couple divorced in 1949. From later that year until 1954, Sanders was married to Hungarian actress Zsuzsa Gabor, with whom he starred in the film Death of a Scoundrel after their divorce. On February 10, 1959, Sanders married actress Benita Hume, widow of actor Ronald Colman. She died in 1967, the same year Sanders' brother Tom Conway died of liver failure. Sanders had become distant from his brother a decade before due to Conway's drinking problem. His autobiography, Memoirs of a Professional Cad, was published in 1960 and gathered critical praise for its wit. Sanders suggested the title A Dreadful Man for his biography, which was later written by Sanders' friend Brian Ahern and published in 1979. Sanders' last marriage was on December 4, 1970, to Magda Gabor, the elder sister of his second wife. This marriage lasted only 32 days, after which he began drinking heavily. In his later years, Sanders suffered from dementia, worsened by waning health. He can be seen teetering in his last films, owing to a loss of balance. According to Ahern's biography, he also had a minor stroke. Sanders could not bear the notion of losing his health or needing help from someone else, and he became deeply depressed. At about this time, Sanders found he could no longer play his grand piano, which he dragged outside and smashed with an axe. His last girlfriend, who was Mexican and much younger than he, persuaded Sanders to sell his beloved house in Mallorca, Spain, which he later bitterly regretted. From then on, he drifted. Death: on April 23, 1972, Sanders checked into a hotel in Castelldefels, a coastal town near Barcelona. He was found dead 2 days later, having gone into a cardiac arrest, after taking 5 bottles of the barbiturate Nembutal. Sanders was 65 years old. The death was officially a suicide since he left behind 3 suicide notes, which read, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored. I feel I have lived long enough. I am leaving you with your worries in this sweet cesspool. Good luck." Sanders' body was returned to Britain for funeral services, after which it was cremated and the ashes were scattered in the English Channel. David Niven wrote in his second autobiography, Bring on the Empty Horses, that in 1937 his friend George Sanders had predicted he would commit suicide when he was 65, and in his 50s, he appeared depressed since his marriages had failed and several tragedies had befallen him. Honors: Sanders garnered 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, for films at 1636 Vine Street and for television at 7007 Hollywood Boulevard. This fact is mentioned in the song Celluloid Heroes by the Kinks. If you covered him with garbage, George Sanders would still have style. His ghost makes an appearance in Clive Barker's novel Cold Hard Canyon as well as in the animated feature 2007 animated film Dante's Inferno. In 2005, Charles Dennis wrote and played Sanders in his play High Class Heel at the National Arts Club in New York City. Filmography: television, Screen Directors Playhouse, Ford Star Jubilee or The Top, The George Sanders Mystery Theater, What's My Line? 151,957 Mystery Guest, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Traitor, The Rogues, The Man from UNCLE. The Gazebo in the Maze Affair, and The Yukon Affair, Daniel Boone, Batman Mr. Freeze, Mission, Impossible the Merchant, Broadway, Conversation Piece, at the 44th Street Theatre, 1934. References, Notes. Bibliography. External links, George Sanders at the Internet Movie Database, George Sanders at the Internet Broadway Database, George Sanders at the TCM Movie Database, George Sanders at Find a Grave.